Okay, thank you all for sticking around. I know coffee is coming soon and probably itching to get out there. I'll make it very fast. There are many ways to sort of frame this study that we're going to talk about. I guess the sort of traditional way would be to talk about ethnobiological knowledge systems and perhaps knowledge of environmental change in this case, perhaps the impacts on knowledge in terms of loss or gain of knowledge as a result. We could also talk about plant conservation of non-timber forest products, since Lantana camara has that particular impact. We could look at adaptation and climate change impacts, since Lantana is in part spread by climate change impacts in this area. We could talk about multi-species ethnography, very popular these days, and in this case I'll be looking at the relationships between grazers, fodder species, and people, and cows, sorry. Or as Ida mentioned this morning, this could be a talk on ethnobiology phase 5, a discussion about survival. And perhaps I might characterize ethnobiology 5 as sort of an ethnobiology of change. That is a focus on dynamics and how knowledge is being instantiated or implemented as a result of trying to deal with transformations both in the landscape and in social and cultural contexts. But I think most of this talk really is going to be about complexity and about the methodological issues in dealing with complex situations such as environmental change that intersect with social and cultural changes and being able to tease out the causal histories of particular kinds of responses in this case. That's why I call it explaining urban responses. Let's see, how do we go forward? There we go. So as I said, let's start with biodiversity changes. We know biodiversity is changing around the world for various reasons, including climate change. And there's a whole bunch of kinds of change that are being witnessed by people around the world. In this case, we're looking at invasive species in India, Lantana camara. But we could talk quite a lot about all of the other kinds of impacts that are happening. So in southern India where I work, Lantana indica is a native species, not a problem at all. Lantana camara, though, from Central America, has become a really nasty invasive, one of the top 10 invasive species in the world, affecting various parts, including the dry tropics of South Africa, Australia, and southern India. And there are a couple of other species, but we're focused mostly on Lantana camara from its origins in Central America through to Great Britain in 1690, and then brought by the colonial people to South Africa, India, Australia, leading to this massive sort of invasion. The area that I've been working on is in southern India, in Karnataka, with Atri, the Ashoka Trust for Research on Ecology and the Environment, and in their research areas, which are 3 sort of protected areas: a tiger reserve, wildlife sanctuary, forest protected areas, and MM Hills in particular. And MM Hills is a wildlife sanctuary. Here you can see the 2-meter-high Lantana camara in the understory of the forest. This is quite typical impact in this area. This is also a temple town and receives 1 million pilgrims a year. So the idea of having a wildlife sanctuary where you have 1 million pilgrims a year is kind of interesting conflicts, but it's another story. So what Atri and researchers have been able to document in terms of the ecological impacts of Lantana in this area is that, well, we've got a new species in large numbers. It's beginning to outcompete individuals of other species, principally herbs and grasses, which are fodder species for both people and herbivores that support things like tigers. So this impacts faunal biodiversity. And then we also have displacement of native flora, which affects fauna that use it. And also we have indirect effects on species composition through the impact on soils, waters, and other ecological processes. The village where we've been doing research is called Kombudiki. It's a little postage stamp here of green in a sea of forest. Might not expect something like that in the middle of India, but indeed you have this as a view of the village, which is mostly fields of millet and beans and some maize, and surrounded by dry deciduous forest which is full of wild elephants, tigers, leopards, sloth bears, and people grazing cattle. This little village is about 700 people or so, made up of two different ethnic groups, the Lingayat, who are Hindu priestly caste, Shiva worshippers, and the Soliga, who are former sort of hunter-gatherers, forest people. And they sort of have this typical farmer, forest, forager kind of relationship, but not as you might find in other parts of the world. They depend on millets and rice and beans, but also forest products, non-timber forest products such as broom grass, bamboo, baskets, amla fruit, and other things that are collected and sold in the marketplaces. I should say honey is also quite important in this area. But many people, almost every family, has cattle or buffalo, goats, and chickens, and animals and animal products are very important in this part as they are in most of village India. This is the Soliga hamlet at the southern end of the village, and you'll see the road here on both sides, massive amounts of lantana that are crowding out the roads. And this will become important in just a second. So our initial survey of the area was really focused on what are the impacts of lantana on people's human-environment relationships. And we did sort of typical survey kind of work. And basically what we found was that people recognized that there was a reduced abundance of forest resources used for subsistence and commercial sale. But they also mentioned that it was no longer safe or easy to access the forest. And so then some of the direct responses that we have seen with regard to lantana in this community are the use of lantana for fencing. As you can see up here, cut and used for fencing. And part of that is to protect from elephants and pigs and other animals that are getting into the fields. And part of that sort of increased wildlife pressure is due to the fact that lantana is in the forest, covering up all the food resources of these animals. Fertilizer being burned in fields, fallow fields, the ash is considered to be quite good, actually. Cash, believe it or not, people get money for clearing lantana, and they see it as a valuable resource in that way. A little bit for medicine, and there's a small furniture workshop, furniture sort of enterprise that's been started by A-Tree, but it only affects a couple of communities and is in need of market help in many cases. There's a picture of, again, of the lantana being used in fencing on the edge of the community. Okay, and here is clearing the roadsides for cash. Remember that picture I showed you of the road leading up to the Soliga hamlet? Here it is now being cleaned out by people from the community. These are people from the community that only did it because they were being paid by the government. Otherwise, they'd just leave lantana. It doesn't have any uses yet. But the question I wanted to ask, and these are more of along the methodological problems I'm going to raise, is how do we know what a response is? I mean, these are fairly obvious responses, but you know, is the clearing of lantana here due to lantana or the fact that cash is actually being offered? And of course, how do you know that the responses that you're looking at are actually caused by lantana itself? And so we set about looking at these responses, first starting with some observations that people made about grazing animals in the forest. So we're focusing on grazers and the responses they have now. And they said some interesting things. One, that lantana suppresses forest understory vegetation. You've heard that from scientists. Therefore, cattle have to graze longer on alternate food sources. That dietary changes may weaken the cattle and make them vulnerable to accidental injury or ill health. That grazers avoid dense thickets of lantana and some forest altogether for fear of accidentally encountering dangerous wild animals such as elephants. And households are giving up cattle because it has become too difficult to feed them. So we wanted to set about sort of testing these ideas or exploring them in a little bit greater detail. So over the period of a year or so, we've been doing this, using participant observation to follow grazers into the forest and see what they actually do, where they go for how long, how they deal with lantana, and looking again at what the animals are actually eating. And then, of course, talking to people about grazing patterns, on the herd histories, whether they're giving up cattle or not and why, and what their future plans are. And then we've had a bunch of methods associated with fodder species being impacted and eaten. We've even been collecting dung samples to do DNA analysis of what cattle are eating from that point of view. And we collected also voucher specimens of all the fodder species we can identify as a reference collection. And we've been asking, are the livestock actually healthy? So we had a veterinarian come in to check livestock a couple of times in the year to find out how healthy the animals are. And they seem to be very healthy, not suffering from malnutrition, which was good news, I suppose. Again, different kinds of methods that we could use to begin to explore some of the observations made by local people. Here we are grazing cattle with sort of participant observation with grazers going out into the forest. Again, observing cattle and seeing what they actually eat, and sitting down also in the field with my two great research assistants chatting about what's actually happening and why people are doing what they're doing. So I want to just say a little bit about causal event analysis, or ACE. Pete Veit and Brad Walter's ideas about how we establish the causality of events. We could ask, how does Lantana affect grazing pathways, for instance? And that would be looking at environmental change and the causes in terms of responses. And that's sort of a cause to effects kind of logic. And that, of course, has been identified as vulnerable to confirmation bias. We don't really know if that is the only cause of what we're looking at. So I like to switch the question around and say, why do grazers go where they go? And this then is a response which we then look for the causes of. And some of those causes may have to do with Lantana, but they may also be due to other things. And so, for instance, we think about where grazers go in the forest. They may have to push through the Lantana, or they may avoid it. They may avoid elephants like this one here, hiding in the forest on the Lantana. They may change their grazing pattern due to the abundance of certain species of fodder that they prefer, or that their animals prefer. They may choose areas of high diversity or high abundance. They may choose specific species, like this nalehu, which is preferred and said to give the best milk for cattle, that makes cattle strong. They may avoid steep slopes. They may just let the cattle decide where to go, which is quite interesting. Many people told us, well, it doesn't matter really, they know where to go. The cattle are the ones who respond to Lantana, not us. They may have some preferred species, like these goats who really love this bamboo. They may actually go where they can harvest bamboo, like Giri here, who is actually chooses his place to graze cattle based on the abundance of bamboo that he can use to make baskets. Again, Lantana playing very little part of it, and in fact him trying to sort of kill two birds with one stone. And it may have something to do with the health of cattle. So all of these, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. All of these are factors. Here is Puta climbing up a tree to cut down leaves to feed his goats. And this is the species that he might use to feed the goats, obviously would impact his grazing patterns. And it may depend on weather. And this is the dry season, everything is brown. And here you have cattle grazing outside the forest in the edges of the village. So where to graze, then, can be determined by many different factors that are indicated here. And any particular grazing event will be due to a number of these things, only one of which may be Lantana abundance. Another thing that we've noticed, I'm sorry, what?
Seconds.
Yeah, 1 second.
1 second.
Go ahead and finish up.
Okay. The other thing I would just say is that if we looked at the question of livestock numbers, we've noticed that the number of livestock numbers are decreasing in the community. Why might that be? Is it due to Lantana? And again, we turn that question around, why people have fewer cattle, and with that we get quite interesting data that is consistent with around southern India, that people are reducing the number of cattle in the communities. We're down to 1961 levels at this point. And there are other factors. People claim that cattle are vulnerable to attack from tigers. The forestry department is forcing people out of the forests now. So they have less places to graze. Wage migration is coming in, so there's less labor to graze cattle. People are having smaller families, again, labor issues, involving themselves in new occupations, again, labor issues. And it seems like there's a whole raft of different factors that are leading to people to have fewer cattle, with all sorts of impacts on the cultural life of villages as well as livelihoods. One thing that we did find that was surprising was this idea of outsourcing. People are outsourcing the sacred cattle. That's quite interesting. And what happens then is that since people don't have the labor or the land or the resources to feed their cattle, they're doing is they're sending them down to the lowlands to be cared for by other people, paying quite a lot of money per year, but then only bringing the cattle back up to the village in the dry months when the cattle can actually produce manure for their fields, and then sending them away again once planting season comes along. And so if we looked at then the complex sort of causal history of less cattle, we find a very complicated picture with many factors, including Lantana invasion, but also forest policy, the fact that people need cash. There's a devaluation of rural life, so young people don't want to be farmers. And then you have family planning policies as well, reducing labor size. So all these kinds of factors interact. When you look at any particular family, you look at their herding history, you realize that there are many different complex interactions that are going on that are leading people to give up cattle with all sorts of interesting consequences. So, just to sum up now, of importance here is that Lantana is of little value to people. Perhaps if it was of greater value, there'd be a different story to tell here. We see an intergenerational transformation towards the market, where Lantana is now catalyzing that shift. The wildlife sanctuary is restricting access to forests, as it hadn't in the past. There's a decrease in cattle numbers that are sold or outsourced, and knowledge of fodder is lower in youth, but some will carry on, and knowledge is not lost yet. This young man has decided, at 12-year-old, he's going to be a cattle herder, and has given up school. I don't know if that's valid. So, preliminary conclusions. Biodiversity change is only one of many drivers of change in village India. Observed responses are driven or constrained by one of many drivers, hence the complexity issue. That participant observation and this sort of causal analysis are methods to determine what's a response and what are its causes. That is to judge the importance of biodiversity change. And autonomous adaptation is happening and needs to be recognized in these communities. So thanks very much to all my research assistants, communities, and people at Kent, and our other participants in the research. And if you want more, you can check out our website, some references, and thank you very much.
I'll take one quick question while our next speaker is being set up. Anyone has a quick question for Raj? Okay, our next